Hi guys, it's lesson 6-4. I hope you have out your SABs, your homework journals, and a pencil for sure. This one, again, has lots of room, so I don't think you need to worry about scratch paper, but get ready to follow along. This is going to be a lesson where I'm just going to kind of go through these 8 questions because I think they're really important, and then I'm going to ask for you to show me this work by either doing your homework and remembering journal or by doing your IXLs. Okay, not necessarily something you have to show me, although I can see the IXLs, but it is important that you're getting this practice. So we're going to jump right in because I only have 15 minutes to take a video, and I want to make sure I have time for each problem. So this first 2 questions are giving you the following directions. It wants you to specifically use rounding to talk about reasonableness. So let me remind you first before we start what reasonableness means. Reasonableness just simply means, does my answer make sense? So I am going to test if my answer makes sense by going back to round those problems to be sure I did it correctly. So we're going to write an equation to solve the problem and then use rounding to show reasonableness. Number 1 says, altogether 91,292 people live in Waterloo and Muscatine, 2 cities in Iowa. The population of Waterloo is 68,406 people. So what's the population of Muscatine? So this one is basically asking you to find the difference between these 2 numbers. So difference is a subtraction problem. So that means we're going to do 91,292 minus 68,406, and that is going to equal n, our unknown number. So let's come over here to the side. I'm going to go ahead and stack and solve. So that's 91292 minus 68406. Make sure I did those numbers. Perfect. And I can't do 2 minus 6 at the moment. I'm going to have to borrow from this 9 to make it an 8. So this can now become a 12. So 12 minus 6 is 6. 8 minus 0 is 8. Again, I'm going to need to borrow because I can't do 2 minus 4. So that becomes a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. Can't do 0 minus 8, so I have to borrow again. So now 10 minus 8 is 2, and 8 minus 6 is 2, and that's a 5-digit number, so I need my comma. So my answer would be 22,886. So I'm going to write that also on this line. N equals 22,886. And now to find my estimate, you want to use rounding here. So let's talk first about this 91,292. It doesn't tell me what to round it to, but I know that I want this to be easy. So I'm going to simply make this 90,000 minus, and you got to find what's close to 68,000. So that obviously seems like 70,000 would be a good choice. And then that's going to equal what? What's the difference between 90,000 and 70,000? That's one you should be able to do in your head. That's going to give you about 20,000. And so then your job is just to simply ask yourself, do I think that 22,886 is a reasonable answer if my rounding was 20,000? And I would definitely say, yes, I think I've done a good job there. Number 2, same deal. We're going to round and estimate as we go. I'm going to change my line style. So this one says Vernon spent $229.06 for groceries, and he paid for his purchase with 5 $50 bills. So what amount of change should he have received? Well, change means you need to subtract the amount you spent from the amount that you used to pay. So we're going to find first the amount that we paid, and then we're going to subtract from it. So that means that we are going to do 5 times 50, and I'm going to put that in parentheses, and I want to remind you why. Since this is going to technically be a 2-part problem, I want to show first what I want to solve first. The first thing you want to solve should go in parentheses. So I'm going to do that 5 times 50 first, and then I'm going to subtract the $229 and the 6 cents, and that will tell me my unknown number I'm trying to solve. Well, let's go ahead and actually solve it. 5 times 50 you can do in your head. That's going to be $250. And then I'm going to subtract the 229.06 from there. So as you know, we're going to need to add something here in order to be able to solve this problem. Let's make my line smaller, make it a little easier. I can't simply subtract without first showing that I had nothing in the tenths or the hundredths place, but that now means that I've got quite a bit of rounding to do. So I'm going to just simply work my way from left to right. So I'm going to make this 5 into a 4. This would have become a 10. So now I can make it a 9. Then this would have been a 10, that I can now make a 9. And then this right here will now become a 10, so I'm able to borrow. And the good news is I've already done all the borrowing work for the rest of these problems. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 9 minus 0 is 9. Bring down my decimal point. 9 minus 9 is 0. And then 4 minus 2 is 2. So that then means that my answer should be N equals $20.94. I forgot my dollar sign. So now let's estimate. We want to, actually, we could probably just leave this number the same. I think 5 times 50 is obviously a very easy round number to work with. So we're going to say 5 times 50. And then I want to subtract this. I don't think I want to make this 200. That seems too low. And since I'm going to be working with an easy number like 250, I think it's totally fine to just round this up to 230. Because I can still do that work in my head. What's the difference between 250 and 230? That would be about $20, and I would say that that is definitely close to my last answer. I'm going to go ahead and move on to questions 3 and 4, but this time they want you to use some mental math. So we're going to be doing some work in our head to be able to decide whether or not our answer is reasonable, and you'll kind of see that these ones are, you'll be able to naturally tell right away whether or not these answers make sense. But we're still also going to work on writing those equations. So let's look at the first one. In a school gymnasium, 588 students were seated for an assembly, and they were seated in 21 equal rows. So what number of students were seated in each row? Well, that means you're going to take your 588 students, and you need to seat them in rows of 21. That will give us our answer of how many students were in each row. This is a basic division problem. The only problem is you're working in big numbers, so it can take a little longer. Reminder for you, typically the way we would do that is we would estimate our divisor, which is 21, and we'll just think of it as a 20 at the moment. So 20 doesn't go into 5, but it'll go into 58. And if I count by 20s, I think the closest I can get is probably 2 times, because what's 20 times 2? That's going to be 40. If I did 20 times 3, that would be 60, and that's too much. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that 21 goes into 58 only 2 times. Now I need to actually multiply. 2 times 21 is 42. And then I'm going to subtract these 2 from each other. 8 minus 2 is 6. 5 minus 4 is 1. And now I get to bring down this 8. So again, this is another one where I'm going to want to try to work with my estimate first. How many times does 20 go into 168? Well, if I were to skip count by 20s, I can get to 160, and that would take me 8 times. So 20 times 8 is 168. So why don't we take this 21 over here and multiply it by 8 and see what we come up with. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. And would you look at that? It worked pretty perfect. So that means my 8 comes up here. 8 times 21 was 168. Subtract those 2 from each other, and I now know that N equals 28 students per row. I'm just going to write that as 28 students. So now let's do the mental math. Now you're actually going to still use some estimation, which is really just rounding, and I'm going to think of this as 600 divided by 20. Okay? Well, I know that when I divide, I can actually get rid of those zeros. And 60 divided by 2 is 30, and 30 is definitely close to 28, so I am good. I am just looking at my amount of time, and I'm going to skip this one, but just to remind, or just to kind of give you guys, you can look at this one on your own. $7.92 was being divided by 8 identical notebooks, and for an estimate, $7.92 is really close to 8. So 8 divided by 8 is 1. So your notebooks should be about $1. And when you actually end up solving that one, you'll see that they're actually 99 cents each. Okay, sorry I have to skip that one. I'm sure you're devastated. All right, let's look at benchmark fractions. This is definitely one that I want to talk about because we don't talk about benchmark fractions a ton in class, but benchmark fractions are just a reminder for you, the ones that you're really used to seeing. You're used to seeing 0, half, and a whole. You could also probably think of a fourth or 3/4. That's something that you can visualize. Benchmark fractions are just meant to be that, something that you can visualize. So you can also actually visualize zeros and thirds as well, but we're going to mostly focus on these ones right now. Okay, so a 5-inch thick paperback book is placed on top of a 15 and 16th inch thick paperback book. What is the total thickness of the books? So that means I'm going to add these two together. 5/8 plus 5/16 is going to equal my unknown. And then I'm also going to make an estimate using benchmark fractions. So I'm actually going to start by using my benchmark fraction first. 5/8 is really close to a half if you think about it. 4/8 would be exactly a half. So 5/8 is just really close to that. So I'm going to make that a half. And then 5/16 is about, oh sorry, this is 15/16, my fault. I was going to say that doesn't make sense. 15/16 is about 1 whole. So I'm going to make that 1. And then that means that my answer should be around 1.5. So now if we add these two together, I'm going to do this work ahead of time. 5/8 can be turned into 16ths by multiplying both sides by, or the top and the bottom, by 2. So that means that this will become 10/16 plus 15/16, because now my denominators are the same and I can just simply add across. 10 plus 15 is 25. I'm going to not leave this as an improper fraction. You guys know better than that. 16 goes into 25 one time. Going to get rid of that 16, and that would leave me with 9/16. And 1 9/16 is definitely close to 1.5. All right, let's look at one more problem. And this one actually wants you to predict first. So let's read the problem. It says a $45 award will be shared equally by 6 friends. In dollars, what is each friend's share of the award? Well, here's what you can consider before you start. If you have 6 friends that are going to be sharing $45, think about how close you can get to 45. Well, if I were to skip count by 6s, if each of us were to get $7 each, that means that we used up 42 of those dollars. If each of us were to get $8 each, that means that we would have split up $48. So that tells me that my answer is going to be somewhere between 7 and 8. So that's going to be my prediction. My answer is somewhere between 7 and 8. But now if we were to actually divide this, thanks to fractions, this shouldn't be too bad. 6 goes into 45 7 times, like we said earlier. And that would have left me with 3. But we now know in fractions, or sorry, in division, we can actually add a decimal point and a 0, and it doesn't change my number. So thanks to Paul Abdul, I'm going to bring that decimal point straight up. Now tell me, do you really want to love me forever? Oh. And then I can just bring down this 0. And then 6 will go into 35 times, which then makes that perfect. So that means then that my answer would be that each of us earned $7.50. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and zoom down here and show you what your assignment could be for this one. One thing that you could do is you could go back and look at the SAB pages that I skipped. You could look at questions, I don't know, I think I skipped like 6 and 8 for sure, and possibly even number 4. So you could go back and try to finish up some of those. Another option is to just go simply look at the homework and remembering pages and try out some of those. Or you can always check the weekly plan, look to see what the IXLs were that I had designated for you, and try to show some work. Make sure you're understanding this important topic. Thanks, guys.